First thing I see is Dazzly. Wonderful. YouTube. Today I am doing yet another Lucas reaction, except it's been a while. It's been a little while since I reacted to Lucas, so you know? I mean, if only I had face cam so you could see what the hell I'm doing. I'm doing the stupidest shit of all time. That's what I'm doing. But anyways, let's pause the music and get started.
There's a lot of updates in Battle Cats that really shifts the game balance in a major way. There's the introduction of the wave blocker ability that nullifies wave attacks and makes majority of
Cat Machine!
wave stages a joke. There's Dazzly, which shifts the uber balance meta. There's the update that introduces Courier Cat, which destroys the balancing of red enemies. All of these shifts Battle Cats in a very major way, but there is one update at the time did not really feel like that big of a deal, but surely and slowly, the update influences basically every single newer unit in the game and ushers in a new era for Battle Cats. And that is update version 4.6.
LD was only out in 2016. I say only out. It was only out in 4.6. I figured that would be like kind of like an original thing, but I guess yeah, that makes sense. That would explain why there's so much less LD than anything else because it was added so much later. It makes sense, but another thing is that like it's the kind of thing where like it's like specific abilities on a unit. Like the specific ability getting added is not as big of a deal as the unit that gets added with it. You know what I mean? So like that would explain why LD wasn't a big deal at the time, but you know, since we've gotten Courier and Dazzly so much later, we have, you know, seen a little more of a reaction from how good LD is. My favorite reaction streamer, don't gas me up like that. It's not healthy because it's not righteous. I'm not that good of a reaction streamer.
Almost a decade ago in 2016.
Is Omni just a better LD? No, because it's balanced differently. Omni will usually just go backwards and will almost never actually go forward. But LD will have a blind spot and will always go forward rather than backward. If an Omni pierces as far as LD does, then yes, because it would be the same thing as having LD but without the blind spot. Omni usually goes forward? I'm sorry? What kind of anti-zombies do you know about? As far as I'm concerned, most Omni Strike units in the game are anti-zombies. And what do? They only attack backwards, not forward, with their Omni. Hello, Ajiro. What's your predict? Why are you redeeming a prediction right now? I'm reacting, bruh.
Version 4.6 does not really introduce like that much new units and
What's your prediction?
enemies. Majority of the update actually revolves around castles and dragon collabs. You don't even get to see these
That's a collab I have never seen.
in EN, but this is also
Well, I never saw it in Ian, nor did I ever know about its existence. Hydrate, bruh.
Almighty's first debut, with their 3 Ubers in the set, Zeus, Anubis, and Aphrodite.
Anubis was tied for the first Almighty? Why did I think that Hades and Amaterasu were older than Anubis? I don't know why I thought that. Omni has such little pierce compared to LD, usually, right? That's usually the case, because LD will typically pierce farther, but let's say you have something with 300 range, right? And your Omni and LD both pierce up to 500. Your Omni pierces up to 500 and it doesn't have a blind spot, but your LD pierces up to 500 and has a blind spot of 1 to 200. So in that scenario, Omni would be far better than LD. However, most of the time, Omni either doesn't go very far ahead. It would only be like from 300 to 350 further, or not further, but far. Like on a 300 range unit, it would only go up to 350, and it would mostly go backwards, or it would only go backwards most of the time. Meanwhile, LD will much more of the time, you know, actually go far forward.
The Almighties is now a very well-known set with, you know, a set with one of the best generalist value. But we're not here to talk about Almighties. There's just one specific unit that
That guy does have the biggest forward piercing Omni.
And that is Aphrodite.
Aphrodite
is amongst one of the 2 first units that has the ability of long.
She's also not talked about anymore. I do want to mention that. Aphrodite's kind of like, no, she's not a top tier generalist anymore, or she's not a top 10 generalist anymore, but she's still really good, and I think people overlook that. She is still really good. And enemies typically have more piercing Omni than cat units, mainly because, I mean, since when does an Omni need a backwards Omni? Very rarely. So like it's not like they need Omni for that, you know what I mean?
Distance, together with Prisoner Cat. Long distance is an ability or a trait that the unit can have where it would affect the unit's way of attacking the enemy and how it would perceive range. I've talked much deeper into how long distance and Omni Strike works in another old video. You can watch that for a
6 years ago. Should I be watching that one right now? Should,
deeper analysis, but
nah.
I'll still briefly talk about it here. Basically, in Battle Cats, the way that range works for normal units is that a unit will
I'm not
always
watching
move
Valorant.
forward until it detects an enemy that is within their standing range, and then they'll begin their attack. If they are an area,
I feel like I remember watching this lesson whenever it like a while ago, whenever it's way newer than it is
attacker, then
now.
anything that is between themselves and their standing range will be damaged. And if they're single target, then any enemies that are closest to them that is within their range will be damaged. That is how it works for every single unit in the game. But long distance is different. Usually for normal units, the detection range and the hitbox
I think
range
we
is
know
always
all
the same.
this.
For example, Paris Cat with 350 standing range.
Chat, if I am reacting to a video, do not go telling me to react to different videos. That's disrespectful. If you want to submit videos for me to react to, put them in the Discord. There's a whole sub channel in order for you to, submit videos for me to react to.
Will
Hello,
always hit
Fenrix.
anything that is 350 range away from them, but long distance can have a different hitbox that are completely separate from their detection range. This can cause a lot of units to be able to hit further than their standing range and even miss enemies that are closer to them.
And this is exactly what I was kind of talking about earlier. Bray Wyatt's Valkyrie actually cooking, probably because this is like a very weak stage.
There are certain
It's
long
BCU
distance units
though.
without any
So.
blind spot, and these units are classified as Omni Strike.
Because look at this, Housewife's just not dying. Like they're just weak enemies.
But long distance and Omni Strike are essentially one and the same. They kind of just have like slightly different numbers. So for the sake of simplicity, for the rest of the video, when I talk about LD and LD's
Lucas, my chat might be a little stupid, but I am familiar with these.
peers, I'm generally also talking about Omni Strike. That is the gist of it, though. Again, I do have a video on it if you really want to go a little bit deeper on the mechanics of LD and Omni Strike. Now, back to Aphrodite. Aphrodite is one of those units that have long distance. Her stand
I forgot her DPS was only 3,400 at level 30. Is this non-true form? I can't tell.
range is 600, while her hitbox is between 450 and 850.
She's still really good though. Don't let that. Yeah, especially with the ultra talents, I think your attack frequency up is actually pretty good.
So she will stop moving as long as there's an enemy 600 range away from her, but her
Non-true
attacks
form,
will
okay.
deal damage to enemies that are between 450 and 850 range away from
Yeah, no second form stats. That's what I thought because I saw the 3,400 DPS and I was like, that doesn't look right.
her. You'll have to protect her blind spot with other units, but luckily majority of non-Uber damagers are exactly up to that task. Aphrodite's job is to hit basically everything else that is significantly harder for your other units to actually hit. Aphrodite is a very good unit, but there's a bit of a problem when using Aphrodite as like an example of LD being good. The thing is, Aphrodite's not just good because she's LD, it's because her stats in general is just really good at the first place.
Yeah. Like, that's the thing, right? Like, LD depends heavily on the stat, so it's hard to get a good example of a unit that would be good only with LD. Like, for example, Courier. Courier is really good thanks to the LD. Like, the LD makes him really good. But even without the LD, would Courier still be good? Yeah, absolutely. His stats are just broken. It's not just the LD that makes him broken. So there's not really a lot of great examples of LD is what makes this unit so much better than it would be without. Because, like, I mean, honestly, it just kind of depends, right? It just kind of depends, but maybe he'll find a good example.
Like, even if she doesn't have LD, she would still be a pretty solid unit without the piercing whatsoever. She got really good standing range and a pretty decent damage, so it's hard to say how good exactly
Remember,
is
second
LD as
second
an
form.
ability, given that Afro's already good with, like, stats.
Oh, wait, it literally says second form. I'm a dumbass, bruh.
Anyway, so... But what about an LD unit that's just outright terrible in stats? Well, let's talk about Riding Mina. Riding Mina is a special cat that is introduced
Are we saying she's terrible?
in 5.0 that you can obtain by beating her station Stories of Legend.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Hey, look, chat. Hey, look, chat, he proved me wrong. There is a unit that doesn't have amazing stats, but is really good thanks to LD. Hey, what do you know?
Learn to love. Mina's stats, to put it simply, is really freaking bad. Her range is 400, which is rather unsafe for a special legend. Her DPS is like 1.5k, which is
Why does it say pre-buff stats? Why does it say pre-buff stats? Who is that? It's somebody. Don't worry about it. I'm not gonna tell you because I don't care. Why does it say pre-buff? Is that like pre-true form, or is that like, or did she get some sort of actual buff? I'm worrying. It's literally an SOL. If you haven't run into Mina, then that's a you problem.
absurdly low, and her health is basically non-existent.
Yo, if they gave us the enemy version of Mina, that would be crazy. She got buffed. Oh, I had no idea. Who is that? I literally told you she's a boss in SOL. I literally just told you. Pay attention.
She quite literally have like half of the stats of Aphrodite. Yeah, it's an Uber versus a free unit, but even by
Not Mina. Who the fuck are you talking about then?
Uber standards, this stats is really bad. The only thing that is
Range and
kind
damage
of good
buff?
from her
Okay.
is that her cost and recharge time is a bit.
Wait, doesn't she have like 430 range or something? Now I heard someone behind you. Oh, that was me. Like I turned around for a second and I said something, so that's what you heard. Yeah, she has 435 range and the same DPS though. Similar DPS. Well, no, yeah, it is the same. Never mind.
Bit
But
better
yeah,
compared to like other special legends.
I
But
don't know what you mean
even
by
then, comparing
IRC,
her
bro.
to other special legends like Ururun or Liliandum, Mina's stats is still really bad. Ururun has significantly way higher damage compared to Mina, and even has a better standing range. While Liliandum, well okay, Liliandum still sucks, but at least his
Yeah.
range is really high, and he have a chance to slow any enemies while also like
She scared me
chill
to
at a
death?
pretty
Nah,
safe
it's fine.
range. Mina doesn't even have any abilities in her non-true form. In fact,
We are talking about pre-buff and non-true form. So back in the day, Mina was, of course, not that great. So I'm assuming he's trying to like take a, he's trying to take a trip down memory lane, aka he's going back in time into the era where long distance was new. He's talking about when LD was new, and so Mina and Aphrodite did not have true forms and all that.
fact, Mina's stats was so bad that this is one of the few units that had their stats directly buffed. Not like by true form or talents or anything. Her stats was just straight up buffed. In update 6.7, her range goes from 400 to 435. That's a pretty good buff, but her damage and health stays the same. And yet,
Yeah,
even before
unfortunately.
this buff, Mina had a couple of usages
Oh, if I remember correctly. Oh, bro, I hate acronyms.
just here and there. Well, she had more usages when she's buffed, but even before that, she still had some usages. Why? Because she has LD. Yeah, her stats
LD is super valuable, and I don't think a lot of people will realize that back in the day. But whenever I reset my game, right? Whenever I went back and started a new file, I did not have LD for the longest time, and the game was so much harder because of it. So that's what made me realize just how important LD is. Just for a casual game through playthrough, LD is almost a necessity nowadays. It is so valuable.
sucks, but her piercing range allows her to be able to
Like not in a unit, but in your loadout. Having at least one LDer is really valuable.
snipe down backliner enemies really easily. Like, yeah, sure, technically you don't have to use LD units to snipe down backliners. You can just use units.
Yeah, but look at what Urun's doing. Urun's missing the owls, I'm pretty sure. It's only hitting the pig or the Lenoir. I can't tell. No, I think the Lenoir is too far back. I think she's only hitting the pig. Like that's the problem without LD is that you're missing what's behind the front line most of the time.
High range to outrange them, or use like waivers to chip them off. But when it comes to waivers, we only had like Crazy Gross as our proper waiver for like the longest time ever. Crazy Gross does this job pretty decently well, but
Up until Slime, Craze Gross was the best piercer we had.
it doesn't hurt to have another mechanic to help chip down backliner enemies. Plus, non-LD units can have a bit of a trouble when hitting backliners or high-range enemies if you want to just outrange them normally. You have to put your units in a position where they're able to get a clear shot, because normally on non-LD units, if there's other enemies in front of the backliner enemies, then you would have to go through all of the frontline enemies first to be able to get a
True
clear
from
shot and
Cosmo.
actually reach the backline enemy. Or have the
Hey, look, chat. It's arguably best Uber in the game right here. It's arguably best Uber in the game. We love
backline
Cosmo,
enemy
right?
push towards
Totally.
you so that they are in a
Miss.
position where your cats can attack them. But LD units doesn't really have this issue because the piercing range allows your units to be way more lenient when it comes to positioning on hitting the backliner enemies.
I don't Is LD really required for Manic Mohawk and Manic Eraser? I think, well, especially not Manic Eraser. I don't think LD is required for Manic Eraser. Definitely not. But for Medic Mohawk, maybe mainly Little Mohawk. Little Mohawk is the one where LD is really the most important.
You don't need to be as specific when it comes to positioning, and you don't need like any sort of setup to be able to hit backliner enemies. It just makes hitting backliner enemies way easier. Not only that, LD Cats is also what I would say accurate. Like I said before, on non-LD Cats, you would usually need to get like a clear shot onto the enemies to actually
Catgun and Filibuster for Little Mohawk? I mean, fair enough, but that's just cheese.
be able to damage them. That's not just only a problem for backliner enemies. This is just a problem for majority of non-melee enemies in general, stuff like Rain D or Bear variants. This is also much bigger problem.
Oh, wait, yeah. I mean, the little cats are kind of later into the game. I don't know if it's normal or not, but I mean, it's not normal.
When they have multiple knockbacks, because if you just keep on knocking them back, they will just often sit in a safer position where they would be safe from your unit's attack, and then you either have to push through all whatever's in front of them, or you have to let them go forward first before you can damage them again.
That's kind of a bad knockback in my opinion, because you kind of want to get a little more damage off on the sloth before you push it back behind the Randies.
Again, this can be really troublesome.
Yeah, that's another thing. I don't know if he talks about it, but that's another thing about LD is that LD plus status is way more valuable because you won't be pushing back things like you won't be pushing things back into the backline because you'll be pushing the backline with the front line if you have LD on your status or on your knockback. And then like with weaken, you can weaken the backline so that they're doing less damage to your front line and stuff like that. So like status with LD is also really nice.
And can make you lose a lot of potential damage. But with LD units, you can almost never have to worry about this, because chances are, even if you knock these enemies back, they're probably going to still land on your piercing range one way or another. You're basically almost never gonna miss your attacks on mid-range enemies, even if the enemies keeps on like repositioning themselves. They're still gonna get hit all the time. For the case of Riding Mina though, she was not really used like a generalist like this, because yeah, her damage is very low, but she's still usable to like snipe down high.
I really like Mina's true form, but unfortunately, even then, her damage is still very underwhelming. I hate how underwhelming her stats are. Honestly, getting more legend talents would be so cool. I would love it because we could finally see more usage for Urarun, Mina, Neandum, and all of them. Like we could finally get more usage out of them, since they're kind of just like none of them are useful in over the Uncanny Legend uh legends now. So like you're just never using them.
High range enemies that no
I still don't have true form Neandum.
other cats can hit. But in her true form, she actually gets her damage doubled. So her damage actually matters now. And she got like health increase and piercing range too. Now her piercing range is up to 700 instead of 600. But at this point, Mina is not the only one that got a true form. Her peer, Ururun, also got a true form where her damage is now buffed to 6000 DPS. While Mina, even though it's doubled, is still only 3000, which is half of Ururun's.
Yeah.
And yet, at this point, with this true form that Mina got, she actually got about as much usage as Ururun. Hell, sometimes I would even
I think I know what he's saying. He's saying that he uses Mina true form more than Uran, and it's because generic generalists aren't that necessary because there's a lot of competition with them and they do nothing special. Uran, her like if you're using her as a generalist, she's dealing good damage, no doubt. But she's knocking things back, and sometimes you don't really want that. And so you're kind of, and so you would kind of rather like using Craze, Bahamut, and like other generalist backliners. But with Mina, she's an LDer that actually has pretty good damage and survivability. And so, LD is basically a niche in of itself, making her somewhat of like just, that much more valuable.
even argue that she kind of have more usages than Ururun. The fact that she's not only able to snipe down high-range backliner enemies in the field, but also basically hitting everything with high accuracy, that's already enough to give her a significant advantage over Ururun, who have double her damage. Because not only that Mina can reach far, but her damage is also very accurate and is always constantly applied to basically every enemies across the board. Now, the important phrase here is basically hitting every enemies across the board. This is important, because when it comes to the introduction of LD, it's not just like, oh, now the units are able to reach farther and your units are now more accurate. I mean, yeah, it's like a big part of the point, but I would say the real main point on why LD is such an insane game changer is a slightly different thing. It's not so much in like a technical standpoint, but more so in a mindset standpoint. I know this sounds weird, but like, listen, what makes LD such a game changer isn't just
Yo,
how
Uber
good
carry.
they are, but also just the fact that LD unit ranges are always so big that you never actually have to look up what their stats are in the first place.
That is a fair point. You can oftentimes tell what their range and shit is whenever they're like, you don't need to know, I guess, their range, right? Like, you don't need to look up their stats, and you can oftentimes tell what their LD is just based off of looking at their attack animation. It's kind of ironic that generalists are somewhat specialists in a way because there's just so many stages that they don't work. I mean, yeah, but like, it's just like it's kind of like Balrog. Like his single attack targeting gives him a niche that is a niche, and it does stop him from working well on every stage. So you could see that as specialist. I see it as somewhat specialist value technically, but most people won't.
Majority of LD Ubers and Legends hits like basically everything in the stage. You can easily tell that the
Yeah.
only things most LD units don't outrange are like very specific super high backliners. Aside from those, you can assume that
Yeah, which means that LDers are basically gonna be like some of the best generalists you'll ever find. That's why Dazzly is such a good generalist, is because having that kind of strength with LD is just super good.
your LD units hits basically everything, so you never have to look up what their range numbers are. Removing the need to look up range numbers from battle cats, that is, I would say, the true reason on why LD is such a game changer. Like, I have a lot of range numbers memorized, and I can tell you like which units outrange what enemies and what enemies outrange which units. Like, Bun-Buns are outranged by Cameraman which is outranged by Aurost, which is outranged by Paris, which is outranged by Bear, which is
I've heard people say that Cameraman is better than Paris against floating, and my argument against that is that, I mean, having the more range is still nice. So like even against floating, I think that Paris is better, but I can see why Cameraman would be used instead. I would rather Paris. But I mean, overall, I think a lot of people overestimate just how good Cameraman is, but that's besides the point. That's besides the point. He's really only good for his crit after SOL, but yeah, whatever.
which is outranged
But I also have these ranges memorized, and it's mainly because of his range videos that I have them memorized. I remember watching like his important ranges video, and I kind of took all that to heart. Listen, I whenever it comes to video games, I can retain very good information. Is Phono the highest standing range LD unit? No, because Cyberpunk has like 900 standing range or something like that. So
by Aurost, which is outranged by Paris, which is outranged by Bear, which is outranged by Dragon, which is outranged by Laboyne, which is outranged by Ururun, which is outranged by Slot, which is outranged by Little Yandom, which is not actually outranged by Camel, because Little Yandom actually outranges Camel by 1, but technically Little Yandom can get hit by Camel if he speeds clip. I
speed clipping is complicated, but yes, even slow units can speed clip.
remember all of these numbers and specific range interactions because you absolutely need to remember these when it comes to creating lineups in Battle Cats before LD exists.
I am cursed with knowledge. You're telling me the image you put on with I am cursed with knowledge, it's not Tony Stark. Come on now. That's L reference, bruh. Or L lack of reference. I don't know what this image is, so I don't know if it's a reference or if it's just like a meme. But man, not even a Marvel fan. I know he's not like a Marvel fan. I know. For those Marvel fans out there, like this video.
Because you absolutely need to remember these when it comes to creating lineups in Battle Cats before
Lucky
LD
Star?
exists. Most units are only able to counter very specific things, because if you're not able to outrange certain enemies, then you might as well just not be able to do anything sometimes. But that's not quite the case for like majority of LD units, especially Ubers nowadays. You can safely assume your LD units would be able to hit basically everything in the stage, and you would be correct. And unlike waves, LD units are so much more common now. It's almost rare for a new Uber or special legend to not have a piercing range or some sort nowadays. If your units just
It's because they still want them to be good, because Ubers without a piercing range oftentimes are forgotten because they don't hold that ability to not miss, right? It's that accuracy thing. You want your units to not miss, and so you want there to be something that allows for them to guarantee a hit, or maybe not guarantee, but almost guarantee a hit. And so just so that the new Ubers are still continue to be used, Ponos is doing this. Or at least that's my assumption.
like a basic range generalist without any piercing whatsoever, chances are it's probably not that good. But piercing range nowadays just makes you able to hit basically everything without even needing to know specific interactions or specific range numbers. Even on non-special units, most of the LD units can still hit basically almost every non-backliners in the game. Except for ones with like kind of a short range like Courier, but like some of the range stackable units that are LD like Volter or Nymphcat, even though they don't have like as high of a standing range than like Ubers or special legends, they still have such a high piercing range that they are basically guaranteed to hit basically like everything in the stage.
On an LD unit, I think that piercing range matters more than standing range, because the less standing range you have, like, okay, so since LD is based off of distance from the unit, right? So let's say Aphrodite, right? Or not Aphrodite. Let's do smaller. Let's compare something with 400 range. I don't know specific units and their LDs, but let's compare something with 400 range and 600 pierce to something with 200 range and 600 pierce, right? The one with 400 range and 600 pierce is only piercing 200, but the one with 200 range and 600 pierce, they're piercing 400 range, right? And so what that's doing is that is causing the one with the less LD, or with the less standing range, to get further but still hit farther. So like, how do I say this? You're still hitting farther, right? Not only are you hitting farther than, you know, the unit would without LD, but you're also hitting farther than the unit with higher standing range would. So obviously you're not going to see that high of piercing range, but basically my point is, you know, it's the effective AoE of the LD that matters more than the standing range, in my opinion.
Except for like high backliners. You don't need to know that like Volter actually gets outranged by Bear or something like that, because Volter can still hit bears pretty consistently too. I mean, she needs Stepping Stone, yeah, but like you probably have a Stepping Stone somewhere in the stage. Like, you don't need to know those numbers. But yeah, essentially I would say
All new Ubers have summon? No, that's just going to be one, like, it's going to be kind of what they did with the Colossus layer, where there's going to be one in each banner and then they'll probably stop. They're just still going through their rounds with the Conjuring.
this is the absolute biggest game changer when it comes to the introduction of LD. Aside from just being powerful, LD units are just really easy to use, and that ease of use is what makes LD like such a game changer. Strategizing becomes significantly simpler.
I miss when rating Ubers was based off of ease of use rather than RNG and how potentially good they are.
When you don't ever have to look up specific
Man, that somehow makes me miss 2020, goddamn. More like 2021 and 2022, but
number stats. Like, just think back about like your favorite LD Ubers. Like, do you know anything about their range stats? Probably not. Does it hit basically everything on the field? Probably yes.
is my chat
even,
in the
like,
way?
for non-LD units, you don't really need to know every stats, I guess. There are like, you know, specific archetype that you might not need like a specific range on. You obviously would know like Cosmo that hits super far, hits also basically everything. Or Rushers, for example, also don't require specific number knowledge. But LD units makes it especially easy for your units to be used in basically every generalist situations. It just makes the game really simple. And then
Yeah. Making the game simple isn't a bad thing, and I think a lot of people overcomplicate it, And I'm not going to get into the conversation of, oh, the game, we're overcomplicating the game. I'm not gonna have a hot topic about that. Holy Uber carry in the background? Nah, it's good. It's not because it's not an actual clear. It's just showing, different ranges and stuff. And Ubers are the best way to show that. But yeah, phono being ranked below velocity, like that's not something I'm going to talk about right now, just because people value different things. But we're overcomplicating everything.
That's mostly a good thing. Oh, also, I'm not saying that LD update suddenly turns the game instantly easier or something, by the way. The first couple of LD enemies that were introduced, like Mina or Clyonel, was some of the most technical Battle Cats has ever been, with some of the discussions and
No Plan 8 is still one of the hardest advent stages to do, at least without being like super over prepared for it.
strategizing going on pretty much all over the community. But that's probably a topic for another time. I'm mainly focusing how this changes the general cat unit meta. The introduction of the LD unit itself doesn't immediately
Why is Lumina in there? Why is
changes the
Lumina in
general
there?
cat unit meta.
Lumina doesn't have LD or Omni.
The introduction of the LD unit itself doesn't immediately like flip everything over. It doesn't immediately make the game simpler. But the fact is, LD nowadays is like
Yo,
in
Tomo.
every new unit and is super normalized nowadays. Is what I'm trying to focus more here. And it's not
Set usage and Tomo usage and betrothed Valaluga usage.
just limited to just LD. This also includes basically
Is that also Izanami?
any
I
of
can't
the
tell.
range extension ability, especially with
I think it is.
Surge and Explosion too, which is kind of fun.
Yo, look, what is up with that quality difference? Yo, the older the older the technique or the technique, the older the mechanic, the less quality it has. Look at that. It's terrible quality, somewhat decent quality, amazing quality. Damn.
Because despite
The high
both
quality
being
explosion.
significantly older than Search, we actually have almost the same amount of like Search Ubers compared to Wave
I know the older ones on the wiki have worse quality, I'm aware. I just thought it was funny.
Ubers. Waves are just really that rare. But yeah, anyways, LD isn't the only culprit here, and range extension ability is also not the only culprit on like making the game simpler. The increasing amount of rusher type archetype units are also partly to blame, but again, probably a topic for another time. I didn't want to spread my focus too much for this video. The basic point is,
Yeah, and then there's the things that have a lot of damage per one hit, and people are automatically like, oh my god, a lot of damage in one hit is automatically the best. Yeah, fuck
LD
it.
units being super common is a big factor to lineup building becoming simplified a lot. You no
Yeah.
longer really need to like nerd out about every specific range numbers or whatnot to counter most stages.
I'm so glad I was never part of Battle Cats where I needed to look at the Reddit for strategies.
And you can just have like a singular powerful LD units that you can just bring for majority of the game, and they would have no issue working on majority of the game. I mean, I can't lie, being nerdy about like specific numbers and figuring out insane strats from like very specific number interactions and stuff, those are kind of what got me into Battle Cats really deeply. Just like seeing the crazy parts of the community that are like theory crafting and doing insane what ifs just by like looking at numbers. Those were fun. So I can't say I didn't miss that part of Battle Cats, but to be honest, this is probably for the better. Not just because it makes the game casual friendly for like the, more normal people, but also because I'm a grown man now. I don't really have that much time to like dedicate on.
Are
like,
people gonna start
analyzing
calling
every single
Lucas
enemy and every
Onk
single
now?
new units and like every single stages anymore and all that stuff? I mean, I still do that sometimes, but the introduction of piercing range makes this job way less challenging. It's so much easier to tell if a unit is top tier or not nowadays. If they're either a rusher or a LD unit, chances are they're probably better than those.
I don't believe that to be true because sometimes the Pierce isn't actually all that great. So it's not so much are they a rusher or are they a piercer? It's more so if they're like you still have to look closer, but I like how he says probably good and not just assuming, yeah, this makes them automatically good. You know what I mean? I am glad he specified that, but I will say with how many piercing Ubers there are in the game, and with how many rushers there are being added into the game, it's less clear how good or bad they are just based off of face value.
that aren't. I mean, there's a reason why Courier's top tier is because he's a rusher and an LD unit. And also, there's still a reason on why Aphrodite, even on release, was considered to be basically like a top 3 Uber. And like, even right now, years and years later, she's still like a really, really good Uber. I mean, okay, mainly because she's not really like balanced well at all. She's really freaking strong for some reason. And the crazy thing is, her damage numbers is actually really low. She only have like 3000 DPS at level 30. That's pretty low. But like, yeah, sure, she has good range, but that LD piercing at what makes her such an easy top tier.
I always forget just how big her pierce is. She pierces. Holy, that LD is crazy. 400 inner range with 600 standing range. That's kind of crazy. I completely forgot that she reached all the way up to 850 and only went down to 450. That I completely forgot about
Unit.
that.
And you don't even have to look up what range Afro has, because their standing and piercing range allows her to hit basically every enemies in the game. There's a reason on why a lot of top tier units have some sort of piercing, whether it's by Surge or LD. It's just because they're not just powerful, it's also just the fact that they're very easy to use. Big damage numbers is one thing, but ease of use really like matters when it comes to like being a top tier Uber. I mean, there's a really good reason on like why Dasley is top tier. She got LD and really high damage number. She's very easy to use and deals a bunch of damage. Like, yeah, sure,
She's the definition of
damage, but
Dasley is the definition of just OP plus LD, you know? Like LD doesn't mean OP,
it's really hard to
but it does add to it.
use. Dasley not only does a lot of damage, she's also very easy to use. You never even have to look up what her stats are to know that she's good. She hits basically everything in the stage and kills basically everything in the stage. If you want to learn more about her and why she's ridiculously powerful, then I have a very, very long video talking about Dasley and why.
Wow, I forgot how long that video was that he had on her. Isn't that literally just him playing the game and yapping about Dasley? Isn't that literally part of his what is it? His returner mode? Isn't that literally a huge like just isn't that just a returner mode video?
Why it's such an absurd unit. Go watch that if you're interested. But yeah, that's why LD is such an insane game changer. It marks like the era of Battle Cats going from, I would say, like a nerdy game to a much more casual friendly game. So hey, if you love
Thank
your LD
God.
units, you can thank Aphrodite and Prisoner Cat for existing. They paved the way for your future LD units to exist. What is your favorite LD unit anyways? Tell me in the comment. And if you have any more thoughts or questions, then also leave it in the comment. I have a lot more videos talking about Battle Cats analysis.
This is just an outro now. Yeah, give support to Lucas. A long time ago, I did ask him for permission to watch these videos, so give him all credit to him. Love him. He's great. He's cool. He's chill. Support him. Returner mode really was goated though, and he's actually tempted to do another returner mode. Except I don't think I would like it as much this time around because if he does do it, again, he's going to do it like he's going to use a lot less Ubers, which is the complete opposite thing that he wanted to do with his first returner mode. Was he wanted to use lesser Ubers, which is like a majority of the Ubers in the game. Like a lot of Ubers in the game are actually like not appreciated just because of just how good some of the Ubers are. A minority of the Ubers are. And that's less so the case now because like a lot of Ubers, thanks to Ultra Talents and Ultra Forms, are being made to be really good. But use limiting the Ubers you should use down to 1 or 2 throughout the entire game, that's ruining the whole point and like having different lesser Ubers to use in different situations. And that's kind of ruining the point because I like using different Ubers for different situations just because it would get boring using the same one over and over again. Because at that point, you would just have the same problem as if you had Dasley, right? Like you would just use the same one Uber for every stage. That's boring. You would have that same problem with any Uber that's lesser. You would just probably like not have as much success depending on the Uber. But that doesn't change how boring it is. You know what I mean? So like I still I don't support that kind of thing. I don't agree with that if he were to do returner mode again. I would just say, you know, have fun with it. This time, don't abandon your main and just, you know, use your Ubers, you know? See what casual gameplay is like again. Especially nowadays because return mode was what, 6 years ago? It was so long ago that everything's changed. So I think doing it differently would be good. But YouTube, if you did enjoy, please do come back for more. I'll yap later, so it's fine. But did I? How far, dude? I swear I have short-term memory loss sometimes. What? How far did I get on my intro? Outro? God, peace.